Good evening, everyone. Hope you and your family are safe and healthy. Welcome to Alumni Guest Lecture on Azure Static Web App organized by School of Computer Engineering and Science in collaboration with student organization Gravity under the aegis of Youth Affair. It's my pleasure to introduce the speakers for today's session. Mr. Bravish Ghosh, Google DSC lead, presently doing internship in Microsoft as Cloud Solution Architect. Students are requested to maintain the decorum so that they could learn more. Over to you, sir.
Thanks. Can you confirm whether I'm audible and my screen is visible?
Yeah, it's showing. Yeah,
Yes,
you
sir.
are visible.
And you are audible.
Yeah, sir, you are
Okay, thanks.
audible also.
So, hello everyone. Azure Static Web Apps. It is a service that automatically builds and deploys full stack web apps to Azure from a code repository. I'm Bravish Ghosh and I am an upcoming cloud solution architect intern at Microsoft, a Google Developer Student Club lead, Microsoft Lab Student Ambassador, MLH mentor, and a speaker at Azure Developer Community. You can connect with me on GitHub and LinkedIn. You can see on the screen. So before we get started, let's understand why Azure Static Web Apps are important. So nowadays, more and more web apps are built using front-end frameworks like React, Angular, Vue.js, .NET, Blazor, etc. And a lot of work that used to happen in the server side have now been shifted to the browser side. So in today's agenda, we are going to look what are the different uses of Azure Static Web Apps, some features of Azure Static Web Apps, demo, and I'm going to share some resources with you, and then you can go ahead and ask me some questions. So what is and why use Azure Static Web Apps? So a static web application is basically any web application that can be delivered directly to an end user's browser without any server-side alteration of HTML, CSS, or JavaScript content. Static web apps are commonly built using libraries and frameworks where server-side rendering is not required. These apps include HTML, CSS, JavaScript, image assets that make up the application. On a traditional web server, these assets are served from a single server alongside any required API endpoint. And when you create an Azure Static Web App resource, Azure interacts directly with GitHub or Azure DevOps to monitor a branch of your choice. And every time you push commits or accept pull request into the watched branch, a build is automatically run and your app and API is deployed to Azure. So what you can do with Azure Static Web Apps? You can build modern web applications with JavaScript frameworks and libraries like Angular, React, Svelte, Vue, or even using Blazor to create WebAssembly applications with an Azure Function backend. You can publish static sites with frameworks like Gatsby, Hugo, VuePress. You can even deploy web applications with frameworks like Next.js and Next.js. So now let's see some key features of Azure Static Web Apps. First is web hosting for static content like HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and images. Integrated API support provided by Azure Functions with the option to link an existing Azure Functions app using a standard account. First class GitHub and Azure DevOps integration, where repository changes triggers build and deployments. Globally distributed static content, putting content closer to your users. You also get free SSL certificates, which are automatically renewed. You get custom domains to provide branded customizations to your app. You get seamless security model with a reverse proxy when calling APIs, which requires no cost configuration. Authentication provider integrations with Azure Active Directory, GitHub, and Twitter. Customizable authorization role definition and assignments. Backend routing rules enabling full control over the content and routes you serve, and generated staging versions powered by pull requests enabling previous versions of your site before publishing. So the basic advantages of Azure Static Web Apps over other cloud services, cloud providers, or PaaS online cloud services, that is a platform as a service online cloud services like Heroku, Netlify, etc. It is that the Azure Static Web Apps provide us performance and scalability. That is, your web assets are globally distributed, putting them closer to your users to minimize latency and business, and the logic is run on Azure functions that scale automatically to meet your demand. Secondly, the productivity, that is, you get an automated build pipeline with different CI/CD functions as you wish. You also get security. The web app is secured with an SSL certificate, which is provided free along with the Azure Static Web Apps. So the without any Azure Static Web App, you had to do all these separately. That is, you had to deploy your web assets to cloud storage, create and assign your SSL certificate, which you get free here. You also have to create your API and establish a reverse proxy that kind of allows your app to make calls to the API, fetch data. You also had to distribute the app globally and set up your own CI/CD process. But Azure Static Web Apps gives you all these benefits, and this lets you spend your time on building new features and optimizing the user experience rather than creating and managing a site infrastructure. So, without further ado, let's get into a very basic demo about how this works. So, there are some prerequisites for this. So, first of all, you need to have a GitHub account, which you can easily, open it on github.com, and you can easily create a GitHub account. You must be knowing that. So, anyways, secondly is you need to have Git installed in your system, and you need to have an Azure account. So this is the basic things that you need to have, the prerequisites. You also need to have the Azure Static Web Apps extension in VS Code. So let's quickly go and see how we can get this. So to install the extension, you need to click on View, then go to the extensions. Here you can search. As you can see, I have already pre-installed it in my system, but you can go ahead and install it by clicking here. And then you can see this button here. So suppose now I need to create a Azure Static Web App. So for that, first of all, I need to sign in to my Azure and GitHub account in my VS Code. So I have already done that, but you can easily do that. It will follow along with some instructions. So after you have connected your Azure and GitHub account to VS Code, you need to first of all get the code from a repository from GitHub or from Azure DevOps. So for let's suppose we have a GitHub repository, so you can clone it, git clone, and then you can enter the URL. After that, now you have to create the static web app for it. So for that, you just need to click here, create static web app. You can see the plus sign here. So once you click here, it will ask in the command palette whether which folder you are going to create a static web app for. So let's say I'm going to create a static web app for it's asking me for reloading this. All right, let me reload. Okay, for in our case, we have already entered into a folder. So let's say this is the folder which contains my um, all the resources. That is my code file, the code base. So after that, it will ask you for the region. So you have to select the region. So let's say we'll select East Asia. And now the static web app, the Azure Static Web App gives you different options. So if your code repository is based on the Angular framework or React framework or Svelte framework, Vue, Ledger, anything, and it's not just this much. You have lots of other options, but this is the basic providence that's given by Azure Static Web Apps. So if you're using vanilla, then you can just go ahead with custom. So for in our case, with custom, and it asks you for the root of your index.html file. So you can see that in our folder, the index.html is inside the source folder. This is the src. So for that, we need to click here src. After that, we have to build the application. So you just need to click on build, enter, and then it will start registering for the resource group. So while it's being created here, you can see if we go to the static web apps, right now we don't have any static web apps live. But while we are creating that, so once the static web app has been created, it automatically creates a workflow function in the repository. So here you can see it's being created. You would also see our GitHub Slackos folder appearing in your repository. So this is the repository of the folders. So already been created, but I need to slow the let's so
Sir, your voice is breaking, so.
yes, am I not audible?
So now it's okay.
Okay, so
That time it was breaking.
okay, okay. Thank you for letting me know. Okay, so now that we have created the workflow file here, we can check that. that a new resource has been created, that is a new Azure Static Web App has been created here. So let's see whether it's built. Yes, so it has been successfully built. So if you click on here, you can see that it has been built. Now if we browse to the website, it will show a simple HTML file that has been deployed in this URL. So this is a basic example of how you can easily host a website that is a vanilla site in using Azure Static Web Apps. So similarly, you can also try out other frameworks as well. So for instance, there are different resources for that you can follow out. So if you want to check out, then you can check out the Microsoft official documentation for Azure Static Web Apps. Okay, so before we check this out, it's also important thing to do is that we need to delete the resource. So for that, how you can delete is you can just right click and then you can just click on delete. So it will delete the static web app. So this is really extremely easy to do when it's the general case, that is the vanilla JS, or while we are using only HTML or CSS. But when you use different frameworks like React or Angular or Vue, then you also need to use Node.js. You can also integrate APIs using Azure Functions, and you can also use storage providers. And there are lots of options that you get through Azure Functions. So once the resource has been deleted here, um, let's see. Okay, so now it has been successfully deleted. So now here you can see that it's not visible anymore. There's also another method to create static web apps, that is you can directly create from the portal itself, that is the Azure portal. You just click on create, and then you can just select your subscription, your resource group. You can create a new one, or just you can try out any resource group that you basically the resource group is required to for any Azure static web apps that you make, and then you can give a name for it. Also you get custom domain, so you can also try that out. And in this way you can create static web apps from the Azure portal as well. So now let's get into the different documentations, how you can learn more about it. So from the documentation you can see that you can also try Blazor, Gatsby, Jekyll Pages, Hugo, Next.js, Vuepress, and you can also see how you can deploy a React app or Vue app. Basically you need Node.js for that, and then you can also integrate API with it using Azure Functions. Here you can see serverless API endpoints and stuff. So some more resources that you can find it useful is from Microsoft Learn. So Microsoft Learn provides you wonderful resources for Azure Static Web Apps. So for that, you can complete this whole modules. So you can see here there are different modules here. So Azure Static Web Apps, it probably has lots of benefits like productivity from local development to GitHub, native workflows for CI/CD, managed global availability for static content, dynamic scale for serverless APIs, and lots of others. So the different modules are that you can publish an Angular, React, Vue, JavaScript app using Azure Static Web Apps. You can also publish an API to Azure Static Web Apps. You can authenticate. You can also publish a Blazor WebAssembly app and .NET API with Azure Static Web Apps. You can also create and publish a static web app with Gatsby and Azure Static Web Apps. This is a wonderful resource that students can find out, provided freely by Microsoft Learn. Other than that, you can also find a different repository on this username static web dev. These are different public templates where you can test out different frameworks. So in similar ways, there are lots of benefits provided by Azure Static Web Apps. So yeah, hope you enjoyed this session. So if you have any doubts, you can ask.
Sir, shall I? There are some questions students have. So, shall I read the questions for you, or you will do it yourself?
Okay, let me see first of all. Yes, so Uves Ahmed is asking, Azure is provided free SSL certificates, right? So yeah, Azure Static Web Apps is providing you free SSL certificates when you host Azure Static Web Apps. Okay, I guess that was the only question, right?
Yes, sir. Nothing more is there.
Okay, great. So the viewers can easily, learn this technology. It's really awesome, and it's also gives you a lot of flexibility because you can be really productive using Azure Static Web Apps, and also it provides scalability and performance to your static websites, and also it has lots of benefits. So you can go ahead and try out the Microsoft Learn module provided free by Microsoft itself, and you can explore more using different APIs. You can try to make weather apps using Weather API, integrating it using Azure Functions, or you can create your own API using Azure Functions or .NET. So there are lots of uh, opportunities using Microsoft Azure Cloud Services and basically Azure Static Web Apps. So I hope everyone got to learn something about Azure Static Web Apps from this. And thank you. That's all from my side.
Sir, there are some questions coming up.
Sure, sure. How the
Shall I
communication
read,
can be
sir?
established from static web apps? Okay, I'm just looking at them. So Praveen is asking how the communication can be established from static web app to Azure function app. So basically, you do that by connecting your function with Azure Static Web App. You can do that using Azure Functions itself. So it's all in the Azure portal. You can explore the Microsoft Learn module, and there you can learn step by step procedure how to use it. You can also use your web apps at
So
that time.
your voice is not clear.
Okay. Okay, let me repeat. So I was telling that when you want to use you want to use APIs in your web apps. At that time, you can use Azure function. You can integrate Azure function with your static web app, so that you can integrate the fetch data, as well as uh, scalability can also be maintained using Azure Static Web Apps, as well as the API will be handled by Azure Functions. So all can be done through Azure portal. So I hope it cleared. Someone is asking Azure is better or AWS. So you cannot compare two services. Both are good in their own place. Both have their benefits, and both are wonderful cloud services. So you can learn Azure, you can learn AWS, you can learn Google Cloud, anything. They are all good. At least when you are a student, you can never understand the difference between them, because you are not going to have that kind of use, that level of use in the cloud domain, that you are going to understand, okay, so this is the difference between them. For you, all of them are going to be similar, whether Azure, AWS, or Google Cloud.
Sir, we are waiting for more questions. If guys have some more questions, then please ask. Please do ask.
Okay, so if you want to learn cloud computing, the best place is Microsoft Learn. So Microsoft Learn provides free modules for you to learn about different domains in cloud computing. Like if you are interested in AIML, you can go for AIML part. If you are interested in web applications, you can of course go for Azure Static Web Apps. For cloud, you can go for storage, you can go for Cosmos DB, or Azure SQL. Basically, Microsoft Learn is the best place for you to learn about Azure. If you learn through Microsoft Learn modules, you get live workshops kind on Sandbox. It's called Sandbox. So yeah, you get Sandbox in which you can try out free Azure credits and experiment with that particular module's practical implementation. So if you are going through Microsoft Learn's modules, you will get the free credits as well. What's required for that particular module? Yes, yes, through private endpoints. Basically, everything will be going through Azure functions. Databases provided by Microsoft Azure. So you have Azure SQL, Cosmos DB, and lots of other databases as well. So the NoSQL one is Cosmos DB, and for Azure SQL is the SQL one. That is the yes, of course. You can always learn through internships. So in internships, you basically get to learn and then explore the particular technology and try out some projects that are given to you. So you can try different cloud related internships. You can apply to them, and if you get into any cloud internships, then basically you will be working in a particular cloud services, and based on that you would do projects. So of course you would learn a lot through internships. Okay, Govind, you are asking about databases. So there's Azure SQL and Cosmos DB. So that's all I have explored so far. So that's all. I think there are other databases as well provided by Microsoft Azure, but the Cosmos DB is the NoSQL one, and the SQLN is of course Azure SQL. If you know about the SQL and NoSQL databases.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, sir. And thank you to the audience for so much of patience. And also thank you to the School of Computer Science and Engineering in collaboration with student organization Gravity under the aegis of Youth Affair who organized this alumni guest lecture on Azure Static Web Apps. Officially signing off, Pratyaksha Singh. Thank you, sir. Thank you, everyone, once again. Have a good night.